So we obviously know that it was a tough afternoon on Sunday for Baylor men's basketball first and then Baylor women's basketball second. They both get bounced in the second round. And I put out there and talked about it on the show as well, that I think there's some questions surrounding both these programs, but looking at the women's program with how they've performed in high pressure games recently and really in the whole Nikki Collin era, there are some questions to be asked here. Because I think last year we had some high expectations for the team that didn't necessarily come to fruition, although they did make the Sweet 16. And then this year, there was a couple different times where it looked like the women's team could win not only the Big 12 championship, but could make a deep run in March. And neither of those things happened. They lost 2 Big 12 championship games, and they got upset on their own home floor in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So I put out there that there need to be questions asked. A lot of you Baylor fans didn't like that. Didn't like that on Twitter. People were jumping to the conclusion that I thought Nikki Collin should be fired. I obviously clearly said it in the segment that Nikki Collin, I don't think she should be fired. Now, if they have a bad season next year or they don't live up to expectations, that's a different story. But as we sit here in 2025, I still like Nikki Collin. I still think she should have this job. You can ask questions of a program and you can be disappointed in a team without saying the coach needs to be fired. So I didn't think I was going to have to clarify that, but according to you fans who I make this for, I'll have to clarify that. And some of you asked, okay, what are those questions? And that's a fair question in and of itself. So let's look at some of the specific questions that I have about Baylor women's basketball that does not include, is this the right coach? Because right now I think she is the right coach. First thing, are we investing enough money? This was an interesting question to me, but one that I think needs to be addressed because a couple of years ago, there was no doubt that Baylor was investing a ton of money into women's basketball, more than almost any major university in the country. Even with as good as the women's program was, it doesn't make money. And yet Baylor was pouring a ton of resources into that for coaching, facilities, recruiting. Okay? That was no doubt. But the last 2 or 3 years, the women's game has ascended. It has taken off. And we have seen the power of NIL and what schools are putting heavy resources into their women's basketball program and how it can change things. LSU wasn't anything to write home about before Kim went there. And they invested in a Hall of Fame coach, and she brought them a national championship in short order. Look up the road. Look at the team you lost to in the 2 Big 12 championship games this year. TCU was nothing on the women's basketball map. They invested in a good coach and Mark Campbell. They have put out good NIL deals for Sedona Prince and Haley Van Lith, and they don't have a ton around them. They've got the 3-point shooter, but they don't have a ton around those 2 players, and they're in the Sweet 16, and they're the Big 12 regular season and conference champions. They're the standard bearers for this year. So now it needs to be asked, what you were investing was good enough in the past. Is it good enough right now? And is it worth it to go even more into the resources, into the money that you pour into this program? That's one question we can ask without saying the coach needs to be fired. Another one, how is Baylor women's basketball utilizing the portal? Because they've dipped into it quite a bit over the last 2 seasons, and every move looked pretty good on paper. But they're not all created equal. And you look at one this year in Aaliyah Matharu, who was an all-SEC player, comes in the middle of the season. That's a tough ask. She comes in December, starts playing games at the end of December, and she had some moments here and there, but it feels like she never quite found her footing and didn't quite have the role that some of us thought she would have on this team. So that's an easy one to chalk up to, midway through the season. That's a tough one. It's difficult to hold that against anyone. But then you also look at a Dre Edwards, who came in from Kentucky, had the eligibility issue the first year. So she's, redshirting essentially that entire year of 22-23. And then when she is on the floor in 2024, all of her production numbers are down from when she was at Kentucky. Every single one. And so you're like, wow, that's not the all-SEC player we thought we were getting. Aaronette Vonleh somewhere in the middle. She had a good season. And so if you're dipping into the transfer portal well that much for starters, you need to make sure that they're all going to fit into the system and that they're all going to contribute. It's the same question that the men's team has, same one. But they need to identify what kind of player they're looking for in the portal and what kind of term they are looking for in a player in the portal. Both the men's program and the women's program need to do that. Is it the right play style? Because it's easy on the eyes, the kind of Nikki Collin ball and the up and down the floor stuff. But you look at the teams that have beaten them the last couple of years, and specifically this past year with TCU and Ole Miss, they had really high volume scoring backcourts and high volume scoring combo guards. And Baylor sometimes got that from Jada Walker. They rarely got that from Sarah Andrews. And Yaya Felder is a shooting guard, not necessarily a combo guard. And they didn't really get that from Aaliyah Matharu. So is that the way they need to go? It looked like for sure all they needed was a post going into this year, but the play style's a little bit different. And do they need, a more athletic post when you look at someone like Sedona Prince, who could knock down jumpers, who was an excellent rim protector because she was long and very athletic and can really deter shots at the rim, not just blocking them, but keeping people out of the paint. Is that what you need from a post player? Because honestly, if you look back at the Mulkey era, she had a little bit of both, right? She had Brittany Griner, who was more like a Sedona Prince. She was the best player in college basketball. But she also had Kalani Brown, who was a lot like Nettie Vonleh, and Lauren Cox, who was a little bit of both. So that's something that, maybe they do have the right play style, but do they have the right personnel for it? Is this what's going to win in college basketball year in, year out? The last question I have goes into hand in hand with talking about the Kim Mulkey era. Is the Baylor women's basketball program too much in their own head? Are they too much in their own shadow? Like I said about the men's program, to expect them to be a national championship team every year is too much to ask. To expect the women's team to be what they were under Kim Mulkey, which was one of the top 3 or 4 teams in college basketball every single year, is a bit too much to ask for. But there's a big gap between that and losing on your home court in the second round and being out in the second round 3 of the last 4 years, twice on your home court. There's a big difference between those two things. And I'm wondering, is Baylor too much in their own head of needing to be a Final Four team, needing to be a national championship team? Are the players and the coaches listening too much to dummies like me or plenty of fans who are saying, well, they're not what they were when Kim Mulkey was there, or, hey, we're going to go and support LSU now because we're Kim Mulkey people? I think that part's stupid, but are they buying into too much of that, of, golly, we're just not a Kim Mulkey team? Because you're not a Kim Mulkey team, and that's okay. You can be a very good college basketball program without A, being coached by Kim Mulkey, and without B, going to the Final Four, every other year or so. You don't need to be that, or the Elite Eight every year, which is what they did. So those are the questions that I have about women's basketball, none of which are, is Nikki Collin the right coach? Should they fire Nikki Collin? Do they need to look elsewhere? Those are not the questions I have. But we do need to start asking questions of this program if they consistently don't get out of the first weekend, the same way we ask the men's basketball program those questions. That's all. You asked for clarifying the questions. I'm happy to do so. Let me know what questions you have or what else you think about this women's basketball program in the comment section below. The state of both of these college basketball programs, men's and women's at Baylor. Let me know what you think they are. Let me know what you think they should be in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube. And then they're going wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys so much for following along and making it your first listen today and every day. I appreciate the heck out of you. We're going to start talking about some spring football plus transfer portal for basketball. It's already hot and heavy. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's episode of your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.